Welcome back to everyone who is basing their entire personality on being a dark empath, but in reality is not.
Calm down, edgelords. It's been 3 weeks. Hello, people who were or are a little too into John and Hank Green's YouTube videos. Welcome back.
Yeah, we know that's all of you.
Yeah, I was gonna say people that follow Hank Green on TikTok, but that's everyone. So
That is everyone.
it's a little more specific. You're the real fans, and you let everyone know it.
Hank Green owns TikTok.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Hey, Hank.
We love you.
Come on our podcast.
Yes, please.
There's absolutely no reason for you to do it, but do it.
Yeah. It would.
That is the reason to do it.
It'd be a power trip to be like, hey, I'm just gonna go on this podcast. I don't even need to. It's just fun. We'll let you talk about whatever you want.
I mean, that's kind of the point of our podcast. You don't need this, but you want it. It's everything you didn't know you needed.
Yeah. Guys, you could tag him on TikTok if you really wanted to.
Oh my gosh.
Annoy him.
Tag him until he either comes on our podcast
Or blocks us.
or blocks us.
We dare you.
If any other, I don't want any other outcome. I want one of those two. Mm-hmm. I want him on our podcast, or I want him to block us.
Yep.
Either way, it is a power move.
Yeah,
Power moves
definitely.
only in HYPERFOCUS.
Absolutely. That's what we're all about here.
I love when I just say something completely random and stupid, and then you're just like, "That's what we're all about here." It happens like every other episode.
That's
and
true.
I love it.
That's true. At the beginning of this school year, Rachel and I, well, we told you how we became friends, so we're not going to go over that again. Basically, met in psych class, figures. But over the summer, Rachel sent our sweet group chat a text.
I'm scared of this story.
That just said, what did you say exactly?
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah.
Where is it? Where's the plaque? Oh, there it is. The plaque is up there.
Yep. It's like up high in our house.
Yeah.
But it just says in this house it's power moves or no moves, and
I'm quoted on it.
Made
My
that,
name is at the end.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
Rachel's name is on it, and I had my dad make a plaque of it, and I brought it back to school, and it had been like 2 months, and so she was a little bit confused at first.
I completely forgot about it.
but
it was a very
awesome.
nice surprise.
Yeah. So
Power moves only.
that has been the point of this podcast for longer than this podcast has existed.
You know, I think that would probably be. Sorry, I moved away from the mic to look at the plaque again because I'm proud of myself. Mm-hmm. That would be something good to put on a sticker.
Yeah.
Or a shirt.
Yeah. So
Or anything.
that's really true, actually.
In this house, it's power moves or no moves.
So,
HYPERFOCUS.
Rachel, that's a really
Yes,
good
ma'am.
example of a good thing and a productive thing and a helpful thing that you said.
Boy.
But
Thank you for noticing that.
yeah, you're welcome.
I appreciate the compliment.
you're welcome. That isn't true of everything that you say, though.
Disagree. False.
For that reason, there are some apologies that need to be made from our last episode.
This is defamation or libel. I don't remember which one is spoken, but it's one of those. I have to brush up on my legal terminology.
I'm helping you by apologizing on your
Doubt.
behalf.
Doubt.
So, well, first I would like to apologize for, there's so much to apologize for in the Dancing Planet episode. That wasn't English.
When your apologies aren't even in English because the universe doesn't want you to apologize for anything
You
because
know
there's
what,
nothing
Rachel?
to apologize
You know
for
what,
because it was a
Rachel?
perfect episode.
Oh my gosh. So first I'd like to apologize on Rachel's behalf in order to help her for how much she
Sure.
made light of the dancing plague because she finds it entertaining.
Was I wrong?
I mean, you told me to not be sad when hundreds of people died. So, yes.
We are in the entertainment industry. We must entertain.
Okay, still apologizing for that. So just as an all-encompassing, I wanted to apologize for Rachel making light of that again. I also would like to apologize once again for the fact that Rachel can't seem to give us an episode that doesn't require a large number of trigger warnings. So, apologies for that.
I maintain that I have nothing to apologize for.
All right, well, that can be for you guys to decide.
Well, then, once again, I will just say that your apologies don't matter because my opinions are perfect. The objective truth and everything I do is perfect. So,
You know what, Rachel?
you really don't need to apologize for anything because as long as everyone is focused on me and what I'm doing, then the podcast will thrive.
You know what, Rachel? We're going to let our listeners determine that, but for now, we have an episode to talk about.
I'd prefer to continue talking about myself and for you to continue talking about me.
Rachel, we're not going to talk all about you today.
Aw.
Because we have an episode to talk about.
No sad.
So I want to start with a story.
Is the episode about me?
No.
It'd be a really interesting topic to hyperfocus on.
Oh, gosh.
Fine, go ahead.
So this starts with a story. He was about a 68-year-old man.
So you said that I might know about this, and I'm just going to make guesses after every single tiny piece of information.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Story about a 68-year-old man who wondered where he was and why he was at the hospital, which his daughter had already explained to him over and over again. He had spent the morning moving boxes for his daughter, who was moving.
Is this the guy whose hypothalamus was split?
No.
Okay.
And he'd been also working through a divorce for several months. Sitting in the hospital, he didn't remember either of those things. He had fallen down outside the supermarket and he had been taken to the hospital. When they did examinations on his brain, everything looked normal, even though he couldn't remember anything recent and wasn't forming new memories.
This is vaguely familiar.
He had lost both his retrograde, which is his past memories, and his anterograde, which are the new forming memories, so long and short term.
I think we're thinking of the same thing. Maybe I just had the brain structure wrong.
So...
we'll get there.
Yeah. He had lost both his retrograde and anterograde memories. But the only physical symptoms he had that they could find at the hospital was that his blood pressure was high and he had scrapes on his face. His memory...
Oh, okay.
In
not
the
same
ER,
thing. Okay.
his memory continued not functioning properly, so he was admitted. Dr. Zakowski, I think is her last name, Dr. Catherine Zakowski, worked with him. She was a resident specializing in neurology. And she noticed that his memory was improving over the course of the day, but he still thought that it was April, even though it was September.
Okay.
And again, no memory that he was getting divorced, no memory that his daughter was moving. There was also no sign of the seizure, which was something they examined for that could have explained it.
Yeah.
The MRI and CAT scan were also normal. After recovering all of his memories in 24 hours,
Oh, okay.
he remembers everything since before getting out of the car at the grocery store, and then his memory picks up when he was in the hospital. He has absolutely nothing in between those two events.
What was the time span?
Under
there?
24 hours.
Okay.
So it couldn't be a concussion, as the patient would have lost his memory for days and not hours. Strokes would have showed up in his scan. Couldn't be a TIA, which is a transient... Oh, I should have looked up how to pronounce this.
What is it? Let me see it.
This word.
Ischemic. Oh, ischemic.
Ischemic? Okay. Couldn't be a TIA, which is a transient ischemic attack. Because it didn't last long enough, it usually repairs itself before causing any damages. So, too short to be a concussion, too long to be a stroke. The MRI was looked over again, and the radiologist noticed just one tiny bright spot on the left side of his brain, possibly for making and retrieving memories, but that was it. So the doctor realized this could be TGA, which is Transient Global Amnesia, which is the topic we're going to be talking about today. So basically, he could remember how to do all kinds of procedural things, just not the recent past, and he couldn't form new memories, and it lasted under 24 hours. For TGAs to occur, you don't have to have any history of memory loss, and nothing occurs in the future. Basically, it doesn't leave any issues in the future. It's just a problem with the memory. So TGA was first discovered in 1956, and still no one knows exactly why it happens. We'll talk more about their research on it a little bit later, but it's a very interesting thing in that most of the doctors and stuff that I read will just tell patients like, hey, you'll be okay.
That's what you want to hear when you have missing time.
Yeah. And so I started reading about it, and I thought that it was very interesting. So first, I wanted to spend some time talking about memory in general, just kind of giving a background on memory elasticity in general. And so I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Elizabeth Loftus's research.
Yes, we do.
And the fact that memory just isn't set in stone.
Yes,
if you have taken general psychology, you probably know who she is, but you might not remember because memory isn't permanent. So we're going to remind you a little bit about who she is.
Do you want to test my memory?
Yes, Rachel, go ahead.
She did a bunch of work on like false memories, eyewitness testimony. Couldn't say the phrase.
So a lot of her research, which I will link in the description, an interview with her, basically her research led her to the conclusion she's been studying memory for her whole career, but memory is not set in stone. It doesn't stick, and new information and misinformation can contaminate and distort your memory, which is something that she has been studying for decades.
I love memory.
Yeah, I know
research.
you do. I know you do.
Love memory research.
Before I keep going, do you have anything you remember specifically about memory research that you want to talk about?
You're leading me to something and I don't know what it is. Flashbulb memories. I don't know.
We'll talk about
You gotta
those.
be more specific. If there's something you want me to say,
I just
can see
wanted
it.
your commentary, to be honest.
Oh, okay. It looked and sounded like you were trying to lead me somewhere and I didn't know where it was going.
To be honest, I had something written in your notes that I expected you to interject
In
with,
my notes?
and I have something written down that I'm expecting you to probably say, and
I know. Never do a photo lineup. Is it that?
no.
I say that all the time.
Yeah, you do say that all the time.
No, I say that all the time. Never do a photo lineup. Never do a photo lineup. I have no idea what else you would think I was gonna say.
That's fine.
I'm very passionate about do an in-person lineup or get in front of a sketch artist first.
Yep. Our memory is incomplete,
Yes, it is.
basically. People don't store all information, and memory is weird, and your abilities will change over the course of your lifespan. When it comes to memory. Memory is also very heavily impacted by emotion. There was a 2017 study by Professor Bissett Simons who analyzed the fact that long-term study participants could identify more pictures associated with negative emotions, which was interesting. So like the flashbulb memory concept is what she's studying. But she also found that these memories were less accurate. So even though they could remember more emotionally charged images than like neutral images, those memories weren't accurate. And so also the false memories were only elicited by pictures of people and not objects, which is interesting because she's now doing further research into empathy and whether that has a role on that emotional impact and stuff. So maybe that could be another episode when all of her research, when she releases that research. But
More empathy episodes.
yes. But anyway, I thought that was really interesting, and I'll have that study linked. I also have. There was a study that was just completed a couple weeks ago on March 10th, 2021, from the University of California, which that research indicates that we experience feelings connected to events as we recall them. And the differences between the facts and the feelings
I'm
are
sorry.
referred to.
I totally zoned out for a
That's
minute.
fine.
Because you said March 10th and I was like, isn't it February? No, but it's not February. I was
my
doing the
God.
math in my head.
That's so funny.
It's the middle of March. I'm sorry. Can you just
You're
start
fine.
over
Yep.
at March 10th?
There was a study conducted just a couple weeks ago on March 10th, 2021 at the University of California. And this research indicates that we experience feelings connected to events as we recall them. So the differences between the facts and the feelings are referred to in this study as objective and subjective memory. So they can function separately, and this new study indicates that subjective memory functions independently, and people generally base their decisions more on subjective memory than objective memory.
Okay.
So that's also something that's interesting to think about in any conversation about memory. And since we are talking about amnesia, I just wanted to talk about how memory in general is super unreliable.
Yeah, it is.
And I think that that's really important, just like to remember in general.
I'm still really curious about what you thought I would say. Like, I keep trying to think of what it could be. Give me a hint.
I wrote,
Or might it still come up later?
here's what I said. Insert Rachel's commentary and probably school story.
What?
Your school story about memory studies.
Oh my gosh. My high school story.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't think I would have gotten there. Yeah, when you said school story, I thought you were talking about college.
You've just like 4 separate times very proudly told me that story.
Yeah, it's an awesome story. That was one of the coolest things that my psych teacher did in high school. So we were studying memory and going over eyewitness testimony and some of those things. And my teacher had another teacher storm into the classroom unexpectedly. And he was dressed up. He had a mask on. And was like kind of flailing and screaming and all that kind of thing. And everyone was like, what the heck is going on? I don't know if they're like still able to do that.
Shouldn't be, probably.
No, it was like my favorite thing in this class. I hope they still can.
Oh, no. I do not hope that they still can.
And then we had to... he was in there for about 10 seconds, and we had to then fill out like a report of what happened. So my teacher put up like 5 questions on the board of information about the person who had just come in. What were they wearing? Like, were they wearing a hat? What was he holding? What did he say? How long was he in there? And almost everyone's was like wildly incorrect. People thought he was in there for like 2 minutes. He was in there for 11 seconds. And people had these really ingrained memories 2 minutes after,
Yeah.
they were convinced they knew what happened. It wasn't even like time had elapsed.
Yeah.
Almost everything was completely wrong for a lot of people. There were some people who got a decent amount right, and I got like, I think I got all of them right, except maybe one I got like half right, and I was so proud.
Yes,
'Cause
I've heard
knew,
about that.
I knew what happened. That was a really fun experiment, though.
Yeah.
And then he had it, like, the teacher changed outfits and stuff between the psych classes, and then we talked about like how people's information was affected by other people's stories.
Yep. And that's a lot of Dr. Loftus' research. But anyway, nobody should be trusting their memory. And we're talking about specifically amnesia today. But I just wanted to make sure that you didn't leave this episode with the impression that you were infallible.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah. So anyways, we're going to talk today about transient global amnesia, which is similar to that. Actually, it is that story that I told you at the beginning, which is a sudden and temporary loss of memory. This includes both the ability to recall recent events and the ability to make new memories. So when people suffer from TGA, they do not lose their memory entirely, and they can recognize people and places and things like that. But like the guy in the first example lost everything between April and September. So you lose a chunk of your memory usually. Yeah.
He lost everything between April and September? I thought you said he had lost 24 hours.
No, so yes, that's a good clarification. He lost 24 hours. In that 24-hour period, when he was struggling to remember, he thought he was still in April. He couldn't remember his divorce. He couldn't remember any of that. After that 24-hour span, all of those memories came back.
Oh, so what? Okay.
Yep. So
for 24 hours, he lost a couple months of memory.
Under 24 hours. I don't know his exact time frame. But
and then after that, the only thing he forgot was the time between getting to the supermarket and being in the hospital.
For him, it was like a blip in the system, and that it was like his brain goes from being in the supermarket to being in the hospital. It lasts an average of 6 hours, so it can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 24 hours.
Okay.
So, which is a huge range of time.
Yeah.
But that's generally the time span. It is incredibly rare. It only happens to 25 out of 100,000 people. It almost never happens to people under the age of 50, which is interesting.
Yeah, I was going to be like, it's entirely possible that I've had that. I feel like sometimes I just kind of black out for like an hour.
Yeah. Rachel, you just have ADHD.
Oh, that.
It does usually happen to people like between the ages of 60 and 65, which is interesting. Seems to be a fairly definitive time frame, not mind frame.
Mind frame.
No. So the loss of memory is sudden, but the recovery is a little bit more gradual, again, within 24 hours, but it's not like everything suddenly clicks back on. It could be triggered by physical and emotional stress, also physical exertion, sudden immersion into cold or hot water, medical procedures, sexual intercourse, and Valsalva maneuver, which is forcefully exhaling without letting air escape while taking a crap.
These are so specific.
They were so specific.
They started out really broad. It's so specific.
Yeah, and so
imagine taking a crap. You just like forget where you are.
It would be crazy. It also could be caused by more serious conditions. So if you or a loved one is experiencing TGA, it's still very, very important to go to the ER. Even if you're like, it's probably fine, they'll get it back in a day. Still take them to the ER because sometimes it can point to an underlying condition.
And with that, we have mitigated our liability.
So generally, it's like a one-time event. So in most cases, and I saw the range between 5 and 25% of cases. In most of my research, I saw 13 and 14% of cases. TGA can be recurrent, so it can happen again. But usually, it's only a one-time episode. So like for that first example that we talked about, that man had very high physical stress because he was moving boxes for his daughter, and also emotional stress because he was going through a divorce. And so in that article, they heavily implied that those were probably the causes for his TGA episode. But in one study with somebody who had recurrent TGA, which is RTGA, as opposed to single TGA, which is STGA, this person who had RTGA had 6 episodes. 5 were precipitated by intense straining due to singing. And then there were 2 patients who had 4 TGA episodes each, all precipitated by sexual intercourse.
It happened to 4 patients?
Yeah, 4 different people in this study.
Recurrently?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an even worse place to just forget where you are. What's happened recently. Oh my.
So I thought that TGA was really interesting because usually when we think of memory loss, we think of like dementia or another amnesia disorder that are persisting in long term. Usually when we think of amnesia, we think of like, media portrayals of it, which are usually wrong.
Yeah.
And we think of like dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that, or even just people that lose a gap in their memory or consistently can't keep their memory. So I thought that like TGA was really interesting when I came across it, and then I started looking into it and I was like, this is crazy, especially because they've identified some things that trigger it, but they don't know what causes it. So I think that that's really interesting. There was a pretty significant correlation in a lot of the studies of people that have a history of migraines, actually.
Oh, this is good for me.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting, but it still wasn't even, it was only like, I don't remember, I think it was about a quarter of the people had a history of migraines. So that's not even always the case. So
That's significant though, a quarter.
It definitely is significant and worth mentioning, but it's not, like, it can't be the only cause. So I thought that was interesting. So there was a March 5th, 2021 study on TGA, which was the one that was studying single and recurrent TGA. So recurrent TGA shows an earlier age of onset, a personal or family history of migraines, and a personal history of depression. Both could lead to these things. Some weaker evidence suggested recurrence with a positive family history of dementia and personal history of head injury and hippocampal lesions, but again, not very many people have recurrences at all.
I can absolutely see that there would be a head injury correlation there. That makes sense to me.
It does make sense to me.
TBIs cause a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah, but it's still, like, it still doesn't explain every case, which is why it's an interesting phenomenon.
I have a question
Yeah.
that you probably won't have an answer to.
Okay.
So are a lot of these memories able to be accounted for by other people? Like, I'm sure at least in some of them, there are people who were around them. Has there been any correlation found between, like, there being a traumatic event in the time span that their memory was lost?
I actually don't know about a traumatic event specifically, but there is a significant tie to if there's emotional or physical stress. So I would assume that could be a correlation. Most of these accounts are obviously from people who were around at the time.
Yeah.
Not from...
Anecdotal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're also not from the patient themselves because it's a memory block.
Right.
So it's even interesting because we don't actually know what was going through their head in that moment that they lost their memory.
Right.
Because they don't remember.
I'm just saying, I wonder if there's like in the memories that they never recover.
Yeah.
If some of those memories were highly traumatic. Like, if there's some sort of correlation. Because, I mean, we know that people can block out traumatic memories. And I wonder if there's any correlation here.
Ooh, that's really interesting.
Like, is there any time that the brain reacts that way because of a traumatic memory? Is there any overlap?
Interesting. I don't know.
Can it be both or either?
I don't know.
Yeah.
All the TGA accounts that I was reading were people that were either taken to the hospital, so there was evidence that they couldn't remember things. Like, it was like every 90 seconds there was a memory wipe, so they couldn't form new memories.
Oh, right.
So it's both of those. It's that they can't form new memories in that period of time and can't recall the recent past. Right. I think a traumatic event definitely probably could trigger it, but
That's
TGA itself, I think, is different.
Right.
So as another like anecdote of somebody that had TGA, which I thought was interesting, Dr. Frank McAndrew, who's a psychologist, actually, when he was 66, he got out of his bed at 5:30 to walk the dog, and he lost the next 8 to 10 hours of his life. So thankfully, his wife was home. His wife found him lying on the bed in another room an hour and a half later, so 7 o'clock. And he apologized for not having walked the dog, like when she came in, because that was the last thing. Although both the dog and his boots were wet and there were tracks in the snow, very clearly he had walked the dog. His wife also was there and was really freaked out, very obviously, because he kept asking the same questions over and over. But he was using the same words, same inflections, and same hand gestures.
I feel like that's almost scarier than like someone not knowing what's going on or passing out or something, because it's like they're completely cognizant, but they don't know. That's a little bit oxymoronic, but maybe that fits. It's like they're cognizant, but they don't know what's going on.
Well, no, and the other thing that was interesting is that he was asking these questions, and one thing he said, because he wrote the article that I read,
right?
He said it made it less alarming. I feel like if it were me, it would make it more alarming. That he would start his questions with, "I know this is like an alarming question to ask," and then do that over and over again. So she took him to the ER, obviously. It was interesting. He said he still knew who he was. He knew who his dog was. He knew who his wife was. For him, it was that he couldn't keep anything new. So his memory would reset every 90 seconds. But it was weird because he couldn't just not retain anything new. He also didn't know what day of the week it was and didn't know who the president of the United States was.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
The day of the week kind of makes sense, but president, like, that feels like a longer term.
Yeah, and this was in 2020, so Trump had been president for a year.
Yeah. It's at the end of his term.
Yeah.
So he had been president for nearly 4 years.
Yeah. He went to the ER and stayed in the hospital for 2 days, although the mental fog lifted after 24 hours. And within 24 hours, he was back to normal. Again, nothing on the MRIs.
No long-term effects?
Nope, nothing on any scans, no long-term effects. He doesn't have a history of migraines. No reason to know why this happened, no reason to think it'll happen again. He was also talking about how other people have reached out to him who've had TGAs since he started talking about it as a psychologist. And he just in passing mentioned something that I had to pass along because I thought it was funny. But he told another man from North Carolina who had work done on his house, like on his air conditioning unit, the day that he experienced his TGA. And he had no idea that he'd had that done until he got the bill.
He had work done on his house in the middle of that.
Yeah. And then he got the bill later. I was like, what? But
I've done that.
Yeah. But for other people
other reasons. Just because I'm stupid.
But for other people who have experienced TGAs, they've had much worse effects in that they were later afraid of traveling, of being alone, of going to work, just really afraid that this is going to happen again and that they'll be out of control. So even though it's interesting because there aren't long-term physical effects, he was talking about how there are definitely like long-term mental effects. One more thing that I thought was really interesting, one more account that I found of TGAs. This was written as a case study. Everything's linked in the description, always.
They know by now.
But this was of a 53-year-old man. He was in a completely normal state of health, and his coworkers noticed some confusion and repetitive questions that were really out of character. So he was brought into the ER and he didn't remember anything from work or before he was at the hospital. So he was feeling lightheaded, but he didn't really have any other like sick symptoms, no neurological conditions or history at all. He came back to normal the next day, but he remembered nothing in between. So very typical of a TGA patient. And his MRI was again normal. But this was interesting because several days later, he actually tested positive for COVID. So that lightheadedness was a symptom.
Let me tell you.
2 or 3 days later, he developed a fever and he got tested for COVID because of that.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
How little I remember.
Yeah.
From my 10 days in isolation when I had COVID.
So
I don't remember.
Yeah. So we definitely know that there's neurological concerns with COVID. That's something that we've seen. So it's interesting. This was only one case study.
I've got some questions.
Yeah.
Is it possible that it was just COVID brain fog?
Ooh, interesting.
Because that's kind of what I'm saying. Like,
or
I don't remember.
Is it possible that the COVID brain fog triggered a TGA?
Right.
You know?
Yes. There's a couple of explanations of what could have happened here. They could have both happened simultaneously.
And this was like a scientific article, but the person who's writing it was like, this is a case study. This needs to be researched. But it's a very interesting correlation.
I kind of felt like I was walking in circles, like metaphorically. I mean, I physically was too because I was isolated in a isolation apartment. But like I would get up at like 10. I would sleep in, wake up at like 9 or 10. And then all of a sudden it would just be like midnight. And I would be so confused. I was like, what did I do today? Like,
that's crazy.
What happened?
Yeah.
I brought so much stuff with me because I was like, I'm going to be so bored. I didn't do anything that I know of.
Oh, man. Aww.
It was so weird. So, yeah, I wonder if it's possible that, like, either A, it was just COVID brain fog, B, it was both, or C, do TGAs happen with COVID? Like, mildly?
Yeah, so that's the thing. He was in the hospital, and they, like, determined that it was a TGA.
Mm-hmm.
So
how did they determine that?
I don't know exactly. Okay. I think it's, from
brain
what
scans.
I was reading, well, it doesn't come up on brain scans. So it's a lot through
I thought you said
observing.
they noticed something on
that was on one patient one time. Mostly, like, for him, his MRI was completely normal. Just for some actual, like, time frame on this, this was the first report of TGA in connection with COVID. But TGAs aren't common in general. And it started 16 hours before his first fever and 2 days before any respiratory symptoms. So that's interesting as well.
You know what happened to me before I got respiratory symptoms?
Yeah. Brain fog. Yeah. So I thought you would specifically think that story was interesting.
I do.
Yeah.
That does make it more interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of neurological issues with COVID. I speak from experience, obviously. That's interesting.
Yeah. That's the information on TGAs I have for you today, Rachel.
I forget it all.
Well, you're welcome to read through the notes if you want to think through that a little bit.
I'll probably forget it all again. Is it possible that these people just have ADHD? I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm kidding.
No. So yeah, I thought that was a really interesting topic. I've never heard of TGAs before today. Had you heard of them before?
I thought, okay, I was going to say, if I have, I don't remember. And then I realized that sounded like I was making a joke, but I wasn't.
Yeah. You say that a lot, actually, that phrase.
Well, it's often true. I often am told things and completely forget. And then I'll remember things that I have no business remembering. So I don't know. I don't know if I've heard about this before. I've heard of a lot of different types of amnesia.
If you guys would be interested in talking more about amnesia or learning more about amnesia, like, let us know. We're both obviously very interested in this topic, so we could definitely do more episodes on this if you care.
I have something controversial to say.
Oh no.
I might want Elizabeth Loftus on here more than Hank Green.
Oh, can't we just have them on here together?
They can just replace us, honestly.
Yeah.
They can give us a week off.
Yeah, I'm sure that they would love that.
Yeah, that would be the best part of both of their weeks.
Who do you think would be more likely to actually come on if we were to ask them both to come on? And I mean, like, if the message actually got to them, not who could be reached easier. If we were to ask either of them to come on.
That's a really hard question. Because, well, I don't know as much about the personality of Elizabeth Loftus. I feel like Hank is impulsive enough and likes hyperfixating enough that he might be interested in it. Theoretically. Very theoretically. But Elizabeth Loftus does a decent amount of speaking.
Yeah.
And
that's actually what I was thinking. Like, I could see her wanting to, especially, I don't know.
Psych students, too.
Yep.
What were you going to say?
Interesting. That was kind of exactly what I was going to say. Like, I could see her wanting to reach, tell us things, really.
Teach us.
Yeah. I feel like if Hank came on, it'd be because he wanted to be our friend. And if she came on, it'd be because she was like, okay, guys, here's what we're doing.
I'm going to set y'all straight.
Yeah.
In your psychology research.
Yep. I think she's really cool. But,
no, I do too.
Yeah.
You know how, okay, I am horrible with names. Horrible. Like, people I have been friends with for years, nope.
Oh, no.
Well, maybe friends is a strong word, but people who I have actively hung out with in some capacity, maybe not one-on-one, but like actively seen consistently. Yeah. I will forget their names completely. No. Don't ever ask me anyone's name. I won't know it.
See, I feel like I'm better with names than faces.
You are.
Yeah.
I immediately knew who Elizabeth Loftus was. I'm really bad at remembering researchers, authors, all of that. Who said what? I knew her.
She's amazing.
She's amazing.
So
get on here, girl.
Dr. Loftus, if you're going to come on anyone's podcast,
it's us.
Come to a place where you'll be appreciated this much.
I just want to be
appreciated. All right, Rachel.
What? What do you want from me?
Did we ever decide how we're ending this podcast?
No. I think I've said this before, but what if we just never ended it?
I think that we should go live to do that instead.
Oh, boy.
All right, Rachel. So if people want their dreams to come true by seeing us live and being able to ask us questions live and hear the things that we say before we remember they should be edited out, where can they do that?
You can hear us unfiltered on Instagram Live, perhaps. But in order to do that, you might want to be following us on Instagram.
That would be at HYPERFOCUS Pod.
You could also watch us rant on Twitter.
Yeah, you could do that too.
But not like angry rants, like
happy rants.
Gifted kid burnout rants about...
So, unhappy rants.
No, it's both.
Well, anyway, that's at HYPERFOCUS_pod on Twitter.
Yeah, don't miss that underscore. You can definitely find us on TikTok lives. We do those sometimes.
We do, and that's at HYPERFOCUS_pod.
Then you can also find us, where else can you find us? Oh, we have a Facebook group now.
We do.
That is HYPERFOCUS :
Dr. Loftus and Hank Green, you're both welcome. Come hang out.
In the middle of the name. HYPERFOCUS : The Facebook page and the Facebook group are both. Thank you. HYPERFOCUS : a podcast for chaotic minds. That took me like 4 times to get through.
Excellent.
The page, you can follow us. The group, you can chat with us and other listeners. Just put in a member request. We will accept it.
Yes, we will.
If you are not a bot.
And if you're not a bot, you might want to let us know. Or if you are a bot, please let us know.
If the bot is smart enough to tell us that it's a bot.
If you're a bot, you have to be a sassy bot.
Aw.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to insult me. But it has to be a good insult. It can't just be like,
You're trash. No.
no. It's got to be a creative insult.
We love
All right,
creative
make
insults.
a creative insult bot to join our Facebook group, and you might get a special shout out on the podcast.
Yep.
And
If you do have any hate you want to send us that isn't tasteful or creative in a way that we will enjoy, you can send it to our Gmail account.
you can send it to Lauren.
Via our Gmail account.
You can send us anything on Gmail, but if you're going to send us hate, send it there.
Yep. That'd be hyperfocuscast@gmail.com.
We still have not decided on a name for our listeners.
So name yourselves.
Name yourselves.
Well, that's what we got today. So we love ya.
Stay chaotic, babes.
Recording now.
Wonderful.
That doesn't mean anything because I can erase anything.
Yes, yes, you can. It's the beauty of audio recordings. Are you ready for me?
Yes.